So, welcome everyone. I hope you are doing well. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Marian and I'm an international marketing specialist at the University of Tartu. And I am happy to welcome you to the Alumni Talks 2023 event, and I will be your host today. Alumni Talks is our new series where our fantastic alumni share their story of studying at the University of Tartu and give a short lecture on a topic they chose. Today I am here with Sophie, who has a master's degree in philosophy. She graduated in 2021. And currently, she is a doctoral student at the University of California, Irvine in the United States. Sophie will talk about the problem of statistical evidence in court. And just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the webinar, please leave them to the Q&A box. We will address them at the end of the webinar. And if you have any technical difficulties, please write us in the chat box and we will try to help you resolve them. Also, we are recording today's talk and all participants will receive a recording after the webinar. But now, without further ado, I would like to give a floor to our presenter today, Sophie. So if you are ready, you can start.
Yes, so let me share my screen. Hi to all. Okay, now you should be able to see.
Yes.
Besides full screen, right? Okay.
Okay.
And it moves well, I guess. Yeah?
Yep, all good.
Yeah. So, hey all, I'm Sophie. I'm from Tbilisi in Georgia. So, as you know, I graduated from a master's program in philosophy from the University of Tartu. And I ended up being at California State University, Irvine, doing a doctoral program in logic and philosophy of science. And I'm going to tell you about my journey, how I got here, what my experience was like in Tartu, what I like about the philosophy department there, why you should apply for the master's program. And at the end of my presentation, I will give you a brief into like one of the topics that I'm interested in that can be summed as the problem of statistical evidence in court. So let me start with a bit of introduction. So I'm a first year grad student here at the University of California, Irvine. This university has two departments. It has Department of Philosophy in the School of Humanities, and it has Department of Logic and Philosophy of Science, LPS, in the Department of Social Sciences, and I'm in the latter. So I'm doing philosophy with a practical twist, so to say. I work on the philosophical foundations of evidence law. I work on rational belief formation, trial proceedings. I'm interested in ethics, also in general philosophy of science, and philosophy of biology, for example. So that this is basically my cluster of my interests. So let me tell you how I plan this presentation. I will first talk about my study years in Tartu, and what I like about the city, what I like about the university. Later, I will talk about my years after Tartu, what I did and how I ended up being here. And in the third part, I will give you kind of an introduction to the topic that I'm interested in. So this is my academic background. I got a BA degree in philosophy at India State University in Tbilisi, Georgia. I'm from there. Well, we didn't have a very high quality, and we still don't have a very high quality philosophy program. So I always had my eye on going abroad and doing my master's there. Luckily, I already went abroad to study during my last year as a bachelor student. I went to Uppsala, Sweden. That was like the first place where I got kind of acquainted with the analytic philosophy and considered the idea of actually doing a master's in it later on. So I went on to do master's in philosophy at the University of Tartu, as you know, and I graduated in spring 2021. So this is the title of my master's thesis, in case you're interested. It's called In Terms of Beliefs as Stably High Credences. It evolves around branch of philosophy, formal epistemology, where people talk about beliefs and belief-like attitudes and try to formalize them. That makes sense. But my thesis was more precise than that. So I was arguing that one of the recent theories of rational belief, the stability theory of belief, has a lot to say about one of the kind of puzzles that philosophers are working on in legal epistemology, which is a field about basically rational belief formation in court settings. And so I was applying this theory from formal epistemology to a specific problem, namely the problem of conviction based on purely statistical evidence in court settings. I'll talk about this in the third part of the presentation. Yes, and after my master's, I did an internship in the Netherlands. I will also talk about it. It was completely thanks to the University of Tartu and one of the kind of funding packages that they have that I managed to do that. And later on, I ended up just being here. I started, yeah, I guess I will answer questions later on. That's the plan, I guess. Sorry. Distracted. Yeah, and after I did this internship in the Netherlands, I ended up being here in this doctoral program here at the University of California, Irvine. Okay, so I will start talking about my study years at the University of Tartu. Right, so I will just say what I like about the program. So the department has a very, very good faculty. They have, I guess you have checked, but they have, I'm pretty sure, 4 chairs, chair in the theoretical philosophy, in the practical philosophy, in history of philosophy, and in a philosophy of science. So when you go there, you have this spectrum of basically all the fields that you can work in analytic philosophy, and you can really try each of them out. So let me quickly move to this individual study modules that I've written here. So one of the cool things about the department is that they offer you very big flexibility with sometimes not doing coursework, but actually coming up with your supervisor with your own syllabus for a topic that you want to study, and basically do your do a course that way. So, and these individual study modules really help you to explore, for example, all these 4 areas of philosophy and choose what you really want to do. So other programs, other philosophy master programs in Europe, they do also have such things. Like, for example, in the University of Groningen, where I was, I'm pretty sure such things existed. I wasn't a student, so I didn't have to take them there. But they didn't offer students as much flexibility. Like in Tartu, you really can take a lot of these individual study modules, and they really, really helped me to understand what was that I wanted to work on. Apart from the coursework that I did, which is recommended because during coursework, you're in a normal class and you get to interact with your peers, and it's a completely different kind of study pace and different kind of environment. So you can, balance your study life with individual study modules. You can take as much as you want. At least that was the case in my experience, and you can kind of balance that out with the coursework. And it's very, very flexible. And it's it's like an open field for exploring anything you want. At least that was the case in my experience. Another thing that I loved was also like the openness of the faculty. Like, for example, in other departments that I've been to, students do organize like reading groups that might convert to more like, again, individual study kind of courses. But in Tartu, like, faculty was very much involved in this. Like, for example, as far as I remember, I and one of the faculty members organized one reading group once. So like this involvement of faculty in like student activities like this is very valuable, and it's pretty rare. I haven't had this kind of experiences in the other departments I've been to. So bear that in mind. Right. Also, one of the requirements when I studied, I think it's still there, is like an internship requirement, which kind of allows you to do something practical during your studies and get credits for it. I helped my supervisor, Alex Davis, to organize a workshop. I remember students prior to me organized a workshop themselves without involvement of faculty members. So, and this is like a very, very valuable experience. So the curriculum allows you to do things like this, which is like, I would say, also unique. I haven't seen anything like this in the other departments I've been to in Europe with regards to the master programs. Right. So other things to consider is that they have tuition waiver, so I didn't have to pay for my studies, which is a very big thing, and additional financial support. I remember I had a doctoral stipend, and then later on you get to have, based on your academic merit, achievement stipend. And of course, you can check it, but that the university department has very good placement record. Right, and apart from all these things that I talked about within the department and about the department, of course, you get the normal things, like you can use Erasmus Plus program for a semester if you need, which is always like a refreshing experience. And of course, they have this recent graduate traineeship that I used and that I will talk about after I did my master's. So about Tartu itself, it's a very beautiful small student town. It has, I remember, like late night studies in very beautiful old cafes. It has a very, very good art house cinema for like movies. It has a swing dance club, and it has like lots of different occasions for different outings. I really enjoyed my stay. I had to leave early. I finished my master's online because of COVID. But yeah, I have very, very good memories of it. And students do that, like they study out a lot in very beautiful cafes. And yeah, that's an experience in itself. So yeah, it's definitely a very, very good place for student life. One thing I should mention is Tartu is very affordable compared to other places I've been to in Europe, like, for example, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden. And these places do also offer sometimes, not always, some funding for their philosophy master programs, but life is very expensive there. So, so bear that in mind if you are also considering other programs in Europe. Like here, the stipend for me back then was around 350 and later on 450. It was completely manageable, whereas with such funding in these other places in Europe, I think I wouldn't have managed. So it's really affordable, which you should definitely consider. Okay. Right, you should also consider that it's a very beautiful country, so there will be like lower places to hike and camp when you need to take a break from your studies. Yeah, and like sometimes people are afraid of the winter and cold in Estonia. I very much enjoyed it, like the early winter strolls in the parks. I never got to experience the spring because of the COVID started in the middle of the year, but well, as I've heard, it's gorgeous. And there is a Kant's death mask in Tartu Museum, which is very cool, and you will get to see it as well. So about the department, I already talked. Yeah, I should mention that also I very much liked the Tartu library, and I'm very pretentious with libraries closing soon and all that. So this library is open till pretty late, and it's very decent for work and study. Yeah, I also thought I would give you just a quick look into what I was doing. So look, I did all sorts of things. I was switching between different courses, took different individual studies where I designed like syllabus myself with my supervisor, and like slowly I started to move towards legal epistemology. For example, once, as you see here, I just did individual study in a very specific topic, which was basically the topic of my master's thesis, problem of pure statistical evidence in court. So yeah, this is kind of the things my interests are evolving around during my first year in Tartu. And of course, there is master seminar running throughout the first year, as far as I remember, which is very, very important because you get to present your work and you present it to your peers and to the faculty. Okay, I will now start to talk about what happened after I graduated. Yeah, so there is this big prestige bias in philosophy programs. Like people think also here, like my peers tell me things like this that I don't think are true, that you have to have recommendation letters from really, really famous philosophers in order to get to very good philosophy programs. And you have to I don't know, be coming from a prestigious master's program in order to have do your PhD degree in a prestigious program later on. This is definitely not true in my case. I'm a counterexample of that because, well, yeah, because I completely got here on my own merit. I can definitely say that. And because of where I went, that is the Department of Philosophy at the University of Tartu, and because of the kind of supervision I got at different levels of doing my study there. But because this prestige bias exists in the air and there is so much pressure with applying to PhDs, like people apply to 10, 15 programs, mostly, as my observation tells me, to the States. Well, I was a bit demotivated because I thought I wouldn't get in. I also didn't really want what I wanted to do. I have other side interests, like in filmmaking. So I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do a PhD. Well, I luckily had a very, very good kind of a gap year in brackets after my master's, in brackets because basically I was doing an internship in the Netherlands, but at the same time it was kind of a break. Like I had a room to consider whether I really like this kind of work and whether I really wanted to go on to do PhD later on. So Tartu has funding for people who have recently graduated and who don't know yet, or don't want to go to PhD yet, or don't want to start, like, I don't know, working yet. So it's kind of a space where you do an internship and you figure out what you want to do later on. And bear in mind that I did it in academia. I did it in the Netherlands at the University of Groningen. But you, especially if your research is interdisciplinary, you can do it anywhere. You can do it, I'm pretty sure, in firms and companies and consulting firms or whatever. So it depends on the topic that you're working on. And this is a very, very good funding package that they offer. You have to figure out who your supervisor is going to be, whether you do it in academia or outside of academia, who your kind of boss is going to be. You are going to communicate with that person. You're going to think about the topic of the internship, where you're going to do it. And afterwards, if you have acceptance from the people you're going to, the host university you're going to, then it's a very simple process. Like you just submit a very simple paperwork to the people responsible at the University of Tartu, and you're good to go. This is funding for 6 years, but if they have additional funding and if you're are performing well during your trainship, then it can be extended. Mine was for 12 full months. And yeah, it was definitely worth it. It was during this period that I was very much involved in the department that I visited, and I wrote several papers, and I was also traveling at the time, like participating in different workshops, attending several summer schools, which is kind of the usual activity for philosophy students. But most importantly, I prepared my PhD application there. So after I did this internship in the Netherlands, which ended this August, that's what I talked about. I went to the University of California, Irvine. So this was the only program I applied to, which is a very unique case because this doesn't happen much. People usually apply to a lot of programs to increase their chance of getting accepted. And this is a top program in the world in decision theory, rational choice theory, game theory. So this is a very competing program with a very, very, very good faculty. I would say the top faculty. Like you can check out the department and the kind of work they do. So why I'm saying this is because I think because definitely what helped me on the way and what helped my application was my writing sample, which was completely based on my master's thesis and which was completely kind of produced with the help from different people at the faculty. So it's basically, I would say, honestly, a big merit of the University of Tartu that I'm here. And the kind of structure their program has, and also the kind of feedback and supervision you get from the faculty. Right, so just to say a bit about this place, and you see the pictures below. It has a huge, very beautiful park in the middle. It has awesome facilities, and the philosophy department itself, it's a department that's embedded in the School of Social Sciences, as I told you. So it's basically integrated with social sciences, natural sciences, and mathematics. Yeah, so I think this is all I wanted to say about me being here and what the University of Tartu and my stay there has to do with this. I do think that one of the reasons I'm here is my experience at the University of Tartu. Okay, I think I should start about talking about the third part. So yeah, I will present a bit about my research topic and its connection to my program at the University of Tartu. Okay, right. So I'm interested, like the more I grew up in academia, the more I got interested in doing the kind of philosophy that really has to do with real life issues and help out in real life situations. And one of the topics that I'm hugely interested in is about how to think about and how to treat statistical evidence in trial proceedings. Namely, I'm thinking about how to better understand and explicate and reformulate the beyond a reasonable doubt standard used in criminal justice systems. Right. So yeah, funnily enough, this standard is completely left to interpretation to the fact finders when it comes to actually judging a defendant as guilty or innocent. So it's completely up to a fact finder to decide whether the standard is met and what's this standard, what's the level of sufficiency of evidence that this standard is supposed to require. So for example, some people think that beyond a reasonable doubt standard can be quoted with moral certainty, but some people think it's less than that. It's some sort of, for example, conviction, proof of such a convincing character that you read here, that a reasonable person would not hesitate to rely and act upon it in the most important of his own affairs. So there are this kind of very colloquial cashing out of the standards made by actual fact finders. And what some legal scholars and legal epistemologists are after is to get a more precise understanding of their standard of proof. Right, so yeah, just to give you like a very brief overview of why people are interested in it, I should talk about some kind of the history of this standard. So that people started thinking about it back in the 18th century. And people were thinking to phrase it probabilistically, like, for example, was a thought that defendant ought to be thought to be guilty beyond reasonable doubt, if and only if the probability of guilt was strictly above some numerical threshold, for example, 0.95. And this was a very natural idea, applauded by many philosophers also later on, like, for example, Lowen in 2006. But this standard, for example, encounters a lot of problems. And one of the problems it encounters is the problem of naked statistical evidence or purely statistical evidence. So let me give you some hypothetical and non-hypothetical kind of scenarios that illustrate this problem. So, for example, so these are cases where the only evidence a fact finder has is statistical, nothing else. So, for example, consider a case where 100 prisoners are in a prison yard, and there is a blurry CCTV recording showing 99 of them killing prison guards, but one escaping the prison, and now we have a situation where all of them face trials, but we cannot tell which one out of this 100 is the innocent one. And the only evidence is statistics, namely that it's 1 out of 100. that each prisoner committed the murder. So it's 0.99 probable for each prisoner that they committed a murder, and this is the same probability for one of the people among this 100 who is actually innocent. And if you go back to this probabilistically phrased beyond a reasonable doubt standard of proof, and if you actually think this way of the standard, then you convict all of the prisoners in this case, including the innocent one, because the probability of guilt is estimated as very high, as 99, which is greater than the usually quantified the way people usually quantify the beyond a reasonable doubt standard, that is 0.95. And so the standard basically tells you to convict all of them, including the innocent defendant. Okay, so this is like a very abstract hypothetical example, but this example has real life analogies, like for example a case that some legal epistemologists are thinking about is a case where you have an accident at night. You are hit by a bus, but you don't see the color of the bus, you don't see the number of the bus because it's nighttime. But later on, you do check the statistics, like of the market share. And for example, you see that 80% of the buses is run by a single company. So it's very likely that it's one of the buses of this company that hit you last night. And I don't know, the 20% is run by some other company. And based only on the statistics, you had and start a lawsuit against the company that owns 80% of the shares. Right, and you have no further evidence. This is why this case is puzzling. Most people, it seems counterintuitive to find liable in such situations, but beyond a reasonable doubt standard, phrased in numerical way, also phrased in different ways. There are different versions of the standard. Give they recommend finding the company liable, which is counterintuitive. So cases like this, and the blue bus case, for example, that I just cited, has a real life analog. Also, cases of most DNA convictions to abandon all these hypothetical scenarios where probability of a match is pretty high, and yet that's the only evidence you have, and conviction seems to require more evidence, and yet this standard recommends conviction. So cases like this are of interest to legal scholars, philosophers, science, probability theorists, and this has been hotly debated for more than 40 years now. There's immense literature on this. So the question that philosophers seek to answer is whether the conviction or the finding of liability should be based on statistics alone, when the latter supports the guilt or liability with a very high probability. So this is basically a philosophical question that's very important to answer because it has very serious implications in life. Right, so to get back to the standard and why the standard, this normal numerical phrasing is problematic. Well, as we saw, it can support deliberate conviction of an innocent in cases like the prisoner's case, and in general, it's and that it's counterintuitive to find someone liable or guilty based on naked statistics alone. Right. Let me. So there is immense literature on this, that this numerical threshold-based explication of the beyond a reasonable doubt standard and its problem with the naked statistical evidence cases. And so this suggested to people that we should completely abandon quantifying the standard. That's not where the research program should go. And this resulted in non-probabilistic interpretations of the standard. To name some such accounts, there are explanation-based interpretations of the Bard standard, scenario-based interpretations of the Bard standard, and the argument-based interpretations of the Bard standard. And there is like immense work done in this, and this is mostly informal philosophy, but just as interesting as this literature where people try to model the standard more formally. Right. So just to give you like a glimpse of one of the non-numerical versions of the standards that has been recently defended and relies on some work from psychology from the 90s, is to think of the beyond a reasonable doubt standard as satisfied when the scenarios and the narratives advanced for guilt by the prosecution explain the evidence better than the scenarios advanced by the defense for the innocence of the defendant. Right, and what does it mean to explain better? And then the philosophical game starts, and people are proposing different properties of that a scenario should have to explain evidence better than the contrary scenario. For example, the scenario should satisfy the criteria of coverage, uniqueness, coherence. And then these three, of course, are like branched down onto what they ought to mean. So this is like one of the research programs of getting a better understanding of the Bard standard, which is very interesting because it has very, very big cognitive visibility, because there is also like a research work in psychology that is used about how fact finders in fact reason about evidence, which suggests that they do make appeal to scenarios. They're building scenarios and narratives in their minds, and it's very interesting work in itself, but it has a big cognitive visibility, and it's being used in this kind of normative explanation-based phrasings of the Bard standard is very interesting. Right, but then the work that I'm interested in basically is more is in between, like the formal and more informal understanding of the Bard standard. So here the authors that I'm relying on and I'm building my work on, they model the beyond reasonable doubt standard by using some probability theories and mathematics, and they're getting basically more formal understanding of the kinds of properties that they think the scenario advanced for the guilt of the defendant ought to have for the guilt of the defendant to be considered beyond a reasonable doubt. Right. And so one of the criterion is for the scenario to be plausible and for the defending scenario not to be plausible. And my work is building up on this, and it's trying to get a very, very formal understanding of this concept of plausibility when it comes to the prosecution scenario and the defense's scenario. Right, and all this work is being done to first of all, get a better understanding of the standard and not to leave it open to fact finders to understand this standard as they want, but also to avoid certain problems, like, for example, the problem of purely statistical evidence, to get the kind of beyond reasonable doubt standard that would not recommend conviction in cases where conviction seems counterintuitive, for example, in cases where the only evidence you have is statistical evidence. Right. Yeah, and this, I just say what I'm doing in one of my papers. So I just enrich this scenario-based beyond a reasonable doubt standard account by appealing to a recent theory from informal epistemology, the stability theory of belief. And I show this theory from formal epistemology, how it can be fruitfully found in a court setting, particularly in explicating the plausibility, the concept of plausibility of the defensive scenario in court. Yes. Yeah, I hope it was pretty understandable, at least why people are interested in this standard, in rephrasing, in explicating it. So that's where my work centers on. Yeah, so this was all. I hope I was audible and everything went well, because I couldn't see any of you interact. So yeah, thank you. I think I'm on time.
Okay, so thank you so much, Sophie, for this exciting talk. And now it is time for some questions from our audience. And just a reminder, please type your questions to the Q&A box. So the first question would be that why did you choose philosophy as your specialty, and how did you become interested in philosophy?
Right. So I was interested. So initially, when I started my bachelor's degree, I was interested in everything, especially in philology. I loved literature, and I thought that's what I would do. But when I was reading texts, I was a bit concerned with kind of meta thoughts about the sentences and like what they mean and the prepositions, and I don't know, maybe some also philosophical questions about grammar instead of actually enjoying the text. So this was exactly the point when I switched to thinking of studying something that has to do with the study of concepts. And philosophy is that, at least analytic philosophy is definitely that. So it just happened. I have a very clear memory of that. This is how it happened. Yeah, just to get a better understanding of the world by means of studying the concepts that we use. But what I'm doing, understanding the beyond a reasonable doubt standard, is that I'm getting a better understanding of a certain concept that we use in court settings today. So that's for that. And I think also the question why I chose Tartu, well, it also happened very naturally, because one of my lecturers in Georgia, where I'm from, did his master's at the University of Tartu. He had the same supervisor as I had, Alex Davis, and he really pushed me just to go on with this, because after my bachelor's degree, I was, like many philosophy students, very confused about what to do with my degree. I didn't know what to do with it. So I really had this kind of mentoring feedback from this person. And I'm very glad he did, because as I said, at the University of Tartu, I really understood that if you sell your work right, then you also can get positions outside of academia. So that was what I was scared of. I didn't know whether I wanted to, teach and do research all my life. So one of the reasons why I got here is what my this person that I know who did his master's told me about the program and how open it is to you trying out different research areas, also very interdisciplinary research areas, the kind that I do, for example, or the different kinds. You can go even more interdisciplinary. So yeah, this was one of the basically main reason I chose Tartu, and I really don't regret it.
I'm happy to hear that. Could you also please share your experience of applying to the University of Tartu?
Okay, so I did, I'm losing the count of years always. I think like 3-4 years ago, the fee is minimal. Back then it was around 50 euro, if I remember. I'm pretty sure, I'm not very confident, but pretty sure that if you really need a waiver, they would be able to give it to you if you're really in need of it. But it's not much. Usually, master's program costs a lot more in Europe, like 100 and above. So that's about the fee. The application process was very, very smooth. And I had an interview. You just have to be honest, say what you're looking for. Even if you don't yet know that clearly, I think it's good to say that. Also probably mention the topic that you could be interested in. So yeah, I don't have anything much to say. It was just a very, very smooth process. Yeah, with a minimal application fee, you get a lot more to pay for master programs in Europe to apply.
Yeah, that is very nice to hear. But there is also a question about what are your favorite courses from your program?
You mean, I guess you mean,
yeah, what were your favorite courses?
In the University of Tartu, I guess, right? As I said, I really love and really profited from the individual study modules, like the ones I did on my topic in legal epistemology. We kind of designed our own syllabus and went on with that. Yeah, I would definitely recommend to do logic courses. Sometimes students are afraid of it, but philosophical logic is very interesting and very, very easy also if you're in the right mindset. And also, yeah, I remember I had a course I thought it was on one of my slides also, in advanced logic, which you can do after you do your basic logic course. And it was very, very well taught. I think it was by Indra Klebus, like one of the people on the faculty. I've hardly ever had a course this well taught. Yeah, and also philosophy of language courses are very strong. Formal semantics course is very strong. I was not very good at it though. So you should be very forgiving to yourself. If you're not good at something, it doesn't mean you're going to fail. So it depends on how much heart you put to something. And so you really need to determine what is it that you're going to love and what is it the topic that you can dedicate your whole attention to for at least the last year of your master's to write a dissertation on. So definitely you should choose wisely the coursework you do. I would definitely recommend logic courses to do as much as individual study as you can, because I think it helps a lot. And I think courses in the philosophy of language usually are pretty strong.
Okay, thank you. So there is also a question I would like to know the answer to. How does studying philosophy in Estonia and in the US differ? How would you compare them?
So I'm in a very special program. Sometimes I'm a bit scared because this is a university which is unique in the world in terms of having two departments of philosophy. It has Department of Philosophy in the School of Humanities, which is kind of traditional philosophy, like history philosophy, more informal analytic philosophy, and it has Logic and Philosophy of Science department in the School of Social Sciences, which is very sciencey, and it requires a lot of knowledge in other fields, and they're very helpful with helping you to acquire that knowledge, but it's also sometimes a bit risky and a bit concerning, but like I'm managing well and my peers are managing well. So this is a very unique structure. I don't know of any other university in the world who has this kind of two different, roughly distinct programs in philosophy. So it's difficult to compare it to the philosophy in Estonia. I think if I were philosophy, the way it's taught in Europe and in Tartu is definitely not the way it's taught here, but that is because this program is very unique. Mostly, all the topics that they teach in Tartu are the topics that they teach everywhere in the top colleges, also in the department in philosophy at my university, but the department that I'm in is more kind of logic and science oriented. So it's kind of the department, the topics taught in the Department of Philosophy in Tartu, but taken one step ahead in terms of it being more closely connected to actual sciences and other fields, which is good. So, for example, yeah, I don't know, if you do find a topic that you really like at the Tartu and you want to relate it more to, for example, it's philosophy of law and you want to relate it more to actual law, or for example, it's philosophy of physics and you want to have more hands-on experience with physics itself a bit more, and with the physicists who switched to philosophy later on and are teaching it now, then probably this kind of program that I'm in right now would be good later on, but definitely Tartu is a really good place for figuring out on what is it that you want to work on to begin with. So yeah.
Okay, so thank you. I think we have time for one last quick question. So what would you say, how international was your program?
So it was very international. The main reason is the students, like because so as far as I remember, we were around 10 people. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like we had 3 people from Estonia, so the rest were from all around the world, and it really it was a lot of fun in terms of like networking and making friends in other countries. In that sense, it was very international. In the sense of like what you are going to study, of course, it's very international because analytic philosophy, like people from all sorts of countries work on it. The faculty also, it's during my days it was pretty mixed. I don't know what it's like now, but I think it's still kind of a mix between people who are from Estonia and from outside of Estonia. I don't know if you are if you're international and you're planning to be there for 2 years, hopefully COVID or anything like COVID doesn't hit again, so you do manage to stay there. And maybe if you're thinking of staying afterwards, I would recommend definitely learning the language, because most of the people don't do that. And I think if you do know that you're going to be for a couple of years more, you should do that for sure. I don't know, pretty international overall.
Okay, great. I believe we have covered almost all of the questions. I would like to thank our presenter, Sophie, for sharing her experience and for a great talk on an interesting topic. I know it is 8 a.m. where you are in Los Angeles, so I hope you had a great start to the day.
Thank you very much, Marianne. You have a great evening.
And thanks to our audience for being with us today. And also a few things before we wrap up. If you are a future student and planning to apply to philosophy program this year, the application period has already started and the deadline is on 15 March. So, and also there is going to be a virtual meeting with the program director where you can ask any questions you have regarding the program. We will send you the information along with a recording of today's talk. So thank you again to everybody and to Sophie for joining us today, and have a nice evening, and to Sophie, have a nice morning.
Thank you very much, Marianne.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.